Hello and welcome to the Adobe Twitch channel. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream to you live here at twitch.tv/Adobe. We're going to be talking about photo restoration, fixing photos, damaged photos, all the things we can do with not all the things, but most of the things we can do with a bad photo. I shouldn't say a bad photo, I should say a damaged photo, because a bad photo is a bad photo. There's not much you can do about that. But we're going to look at some various examples, some tools and techniques to do our corrections, do our fixing, do the things that people tend to want to do to old and damaged photos. I don't really have I know I was going to try and find an example of a photo that was like missing a major portion and try and fill it in or clone it. But we'll talk about it along the way, and if I can come up with something in the meantime, I will. So, for those of you who are watching this on the video on demand on Twitch or the replay on my YouTube channel, know that this is a live show that happens every Tuesday and Friday from 10 a.m. Eastern till noon Eastern. So I'm usually the first one to kick it off on Tuesdays and Fridays. But know that the Adobe channel is live 7 days a week, about 17 to 18 hours a day. So from like 7 in the morning Pacific time till midnight Pacific time every single day. And even on holidays. So there's always something creative to watch on the Adobe Twitch channel. So with that said, because this is live, you will see me look over at my chat. You'll see me answer questions. You'll see me sometimes give shout outs to Paul and who else did I see there? Elsie Finch and Victoria and Vicky and Jan and all the other people that are here in the chat and my moderators and all the people that are here live talking and answering questions or asking and answering questions. So we're going to be talking to people from time to time. So if you're watching this as a recording, like, who's he talking to? On Twitch, you should be able to see the chat these days. That is a new feature. But on YouTube, of course, you won't see the chat. So I'll try my best to repeat or restate the question as I answer it. So that way you get a context of like when I just break away from what I'm doing and randomly say something, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right. Hello, everybody. Hey, Star Crunch. Hey, Ewan, if that's correct. Hello. Good morning, all. And today we're going to do a user-suggested topic. So Tuesday, I asked people what did they want to see in future streams. And two things came up right away. One was photo restoration, and the other one was compositing. And I said I'd also try and do some of the compositing stuff today. But today is mainly about photo restoration, and that's what we're going to do. Now, this is unscripted. This is unrehearsed. This is random stuff that I'm going to be showing you for the next couple of hours, as a lot of these streams are. A lot of streams are sometimes prepared. So, from the standpoint of rehearsed. Some are not rehearsed. Prepared simply means, we gathered files, we know what we think we're gonna talk about, but that doesn't always mean it's gonna go as planned. And that is also the other thing to when you're doing live. That's the other problem with live is that it is live, and therefore there are issues sometimes with a file or a font or something missing or a network problem or whatever. So with that said, thanks again for being here, and let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to show you what we're going to be doing here as far as the files are concerned. And then, as a matter of fact, let me pause this. And we'll go in and see our first set of files that we're going to work on. I'm also going to give you a trick in Lightroom for some files that are missing, and then we'll go from there. All right, so as a matter of fact, let's jump to Lightroom first. I want to show you some examples of ones I've done in the past. Let me go ahead and switch the computer so you can see it. All right, you should now be able to see my computer behind me. And let me go ahead and move my mouse over to the other display. Let's go to Lightroom. Here we are in Lightroom, where I've got all kinds of examples of old photos. So earlier this year, I lost my father. He passed away. And of course, I went to the memorial service and funeral and all that, but that also gave me the chance to go to my grandma's house, and which we keep her house up and going. She's long since gone as well. But I was able to scan and get some other photos that I didn't already have, and some, of course, most of them needed some kind of work. Most of them were in bad shape. Some of them are in horrible shape. So earlier in the year, around, I think it was February, I did do a live photo restoration theme scene or stream, I should say. And this was the one that we did earlier. So for example, I'll show this one first. Let's go full screen on that. That was the photo straight out of the photo album with the Scotch tape right on it. So, those are Scotch tape stains on it. And even in its heyday, even when this photo was probably looking good, it probably still wasn't a great photo, because the background back in those days was obviously fake. That's obviously a fake background on the wall. You can tell by the bottom of it how it's kind of just like rolled up a little bit at the bottom. And he's sitting on this wooden bench. And now the great part about this photo is that, and this was one of those lucky situations, the subject is the person sitting on the bench. He's in pretty good shape. There isn't a lot wrong with the subject. Most of the problem is with the background. So with that said, the background was what needed most of the work. Now I'm going to talk about two philosophies of photo restoration, depending on who you're doing it for or what the end result is going to be for. But this is what we ended up doing. And you can just go back and forth and see. That was kind of the original. This is what we did on the stream. And again, most of the work had to be done in the background. But the background also, you got to remember, isn't the main subject. So my main subject was, or my main goal was to make him look good and, rescue the background as best I could. But I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours on that fakey, already bad background to make that background really look okay. As a matter of fact, if I was going to do hours and hours and hours on the background, I would have just replaced it, because no one cares about the background. No one cares about those fake trees and fake leaves and fake bushes and fake flowers. They just care about the subject. Now, so let's talk about that. That's two philosophies, the two philosophies I want to talk about. In the photo restorations that I do, they're for me. They're not for a client. They're not for a family member. They're not for anyone else. They're for me. So when you're doing photo restoration and it's for you, then you can set your own rules. You can set up what's the most important. Background's not important. Throw it away, put a new one in. Whatever it is, it's up to you. It's your photo. You're going to do whatever you do with it after you're finished restoring it. Print it, put it up on the wall, put it on the web, whatever. So you can do whatever you want to do. So that's philosophy number one. And that's the one that I live by, because the photos I'm retouching or restoring are for me. They're not for a client. I'm not in a photo restoration business. I don't take on odd jobs of photo restoration. So every single photo I've ever restored was for me. So that means I can do whatever I want. Then there's the other side of the coin, where the photo restoration is either A, for a client, B, or for some historical value, meaning that you are literally trying to restore a historic photo and every pixel in that photo has to be restored. Meaning you can't just throw away the background because the background is part of the historic photo. I don't do that kind of work. I would cringe at doing that kind of work, because that means you have to be perfect. You have to make sure every single aspect of that photo is restored. So when you think about photo restoration, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, who's it for? This photo was sitting in a photo album in the dining room of my grandmother's house, and most people will never see it. Most people I'm talking to will never see it. Most family members will never see it, because you kind of go through a photo album once in your life or twice in your life. Usually you don't go back and flip through it again unless you're just bored or you're just sitting there and you got nothing else to do. So this was a photo I pulled out of that album. I had my scanner with me. I scanned it, put it back in the album, put it back on the shelf. Now I took that photo on my last stream in February. We did this to it and we got it looking the way I wanted it to look. And I was able to print it and put it up on my wall. Done. End of story. No one has to critique it. No one has to say, hey, I remember a third leaf hanging down right over his head. Where's that leaf? No one's going to do that because no one else cares. It's for me. So the other thing you got to remember is, cropped and straightened, lots of things. And I'll also point out some of the things that I fixed in this photo that matter to me. But at the end of the day, that's what you have to think about. Who's it for? So, for example, when I looked at this original photo, even though I didn't care about the background, I kept this background for the sake of the stream that I did back in February. I twitched this whole restoration. It might be on my YouTube channel. I can't remember because back then I wasn't always saving every episode. But this one might be on my YouTube channel, and you can go back and see it if you want at terrywhite.tv to see the restoration. But the main things I was interested in for me was obviously the subject, my dad. And then the thing that was bothering me the most about this photo was if I'm going to keep that background, the one thing I hated was this kind of just tattered, oh my God, you can tell it's fake, really fake down here at the bottom. That had to be fixed. Obviously, the photo, the perspective is off on this, the crop was off, the rotation, all of that was off, so I had to fix all that too. His foot was being cut off by just the boundary of the photo itself, or at least where it was cut or torn. And what else? And of course, just restoring, oops, sorry, didn't mean to scroll. Scrolled by accident. Just restoring and having a good looking photo, a photo that I want to put on the wall. So that was what we ended up with back in February. So let me go through and show you another one. Now this was one that I had done much earlier. And again, now we're starting to get into some really, not worst case scenarios. I've seen photos that get restored that look a lot worse than this, where there are literally missing pieces. Like half the person's body's gone. And the person just takes their time and either redraws it or clones it from another side or whatever and restores it. But in this case, as you can see, lots of scratches, lots of rips, lots of tears, lots of creases, discoloration, just all kinds of, and thank you for the condolences, but all kinds of just bad things going on. But when I saw this photo, this is the only photo I've ever seen of my parents on their wedding day, and I was like, I gotta restore this because I don't have this photo. I've never seen this photo before. And so I restored this photo probably, I could go back and look at the exit data, but I think I scanned this and restored it, 4 or 5 years ago. But until then, I had never seen it before. So one of my cousins found the photo in my grandma's house, scanned it, and sent me the scan. And then I was like, I got to do something with this. So this is what I ended up doing with it. Now, I'll point out some other details in here. And also, another thing that we got to think about too. 4 or 5 years ago, Photoshop wasn't as advanced as it is 4 or 5 years later. So it's almost like, we talk about medical science where you freeze a person because later there might be a cure for whatever ails them, and then you thaw them out and apply the cure. Well, I kind of look at photo restoration that way too. I was able to restore the photo with the Photoshop and techniques I had at the time. But if I were to start over on this photo, I'd probably do a better job because I got better Photoshop now, a better version of Photoshop. And I've learned a lot in 5 years. I've learned a lot of techniques and things that I would do maybe a little differently. So sometimes I may even take a photo that I once did and do it again and see if I can make it better than the first restoration. Now, when I did this particular one, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a lot of damage right here on the car. A lot. So it would take a lot of patching and cloning and all kinds of things to repair this first left, let's say, inch and a half of the photo. So from here over, that would probably take me, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, 3, I don't know. It would take me a while to get this all corrected. Look at the finished one. I just cropped it out because it's not important. This is what I meant by philosophy number 1. I don't care about that first little part of the car. It's for me. So am I going to spend hours fixing something that's not critical in the photo versus the parts that are critical, or not? Now, of course, the car is part of the photo. It's part of the subject. So when I got down here on the tire, on this wheel, and I thought, oh God, it's going to take me I'm whining. It's going to take me a long time to restore this. And I got to restore it because I don't want to crop off that. That starts to become, part of the day is that they were standing by this car. I don't even know who this is sitting in the, I guess that's the passenger seat, that's the passenger seat on the, I don't know who that would be, but there's an arm there. There's a person there. Maybe in a few years we'll have the forensics to go in and zoom in and figure out who that is. But in the meantime, I didn't want to lose that aspect of it. So I cropped to here, and I said, okay, well, I got to keep the car, so let's go ahead and restore it as best we can. And, wrong computer keyboard. And what I did was I just turned that tire into a white wall. I cropped it a little bit more from the bottom so I wouldn't have to restore every little single thing. And I did have to restore a lot of it. Now, I'm looking at some of this and some of this blending, and I'm like cringing right now because, again, 5, 6, 7 years later, I know I could do a better job on this. And someday I will start over on that photo and get it, or redo it now with today's versions of Photoshop. And there are still things wrong with this photo that I just didn't have either the tools at the time or the technique to restore. So for example, this photo printed, it's in my living room right now, looks great. But if I needed to zoom in on this photo, here, I'll do it right here on his forehead. Oh, sorry, I'm in Lightroom. There's still little scratches in his eyes, still little scratches in his forehead, still little scratches right here on the ear. Same thing on her. And this was all the way throughout the photo. All these little microscopic scratches that zoomed in make a difference. Zoomed out, printed, don't make a difference. No big deal, because no one's going to be holding it up to here to see all those little scratches. So again, now that I got some better tools and better techniques, I probably could do a much better job on this original photo, this one, and go back in and do it better now. But I did have to get rid of all of this little stuff in their clothes, all of these little things that are, again, important, can't crop them out, can't just take them away. These have to all be gone. So this was all the little things that in a bad or damaged photo that you have to think about how you're going to fix and how you're going to take care of. And again, what you're seeing big scratches now. They're little tiny ones throughout the entire car, throughout the entire photo, even on their skin, even on every little piece of this photo. So this was probably, of all the photos I ever did, this is probably one that took me the longest. Like, I worked on this for days, like, not days, like 8 hours a day, but I would work on it for a couple hours, then close it, save it, come back next day, whenever I got around to it again, work on it a little bit more. So I didn't do this in one long marathon retouch or restoration. I worked on this photo a little bit at a time until I got it to a printable state back then. But today, like I said, if I were to start over in this photo, I think I could even do a better job. I know I could do a better job than I did 5, 6, 7 years ago. Respect Hey man, what's going on? Glad you learned Illustrator from me, and glad we have over 100 viewers. Yeah, we have 100 viewers in the house. I just looked down and saw it. So great to see so many of you here for photo restoration. So we were just, if you're just joining us, I was giving some examples of photos that have been restored before we get to ones that we are going to restore. So these are some, oh, actually hadn't got to that one yet. Hang on. So that was a before and after, and this is a before and after. And this one next to it is one that I just don't know that I want to tackle at any given time. This is a wedding photo, and it literally does look like it has crap over it. Those stains on it look like crap. I mean, it does, but it's not crap. It's something else. Anyway, it's just stains. But anyway, this is one of those photos where you have to ask yourself, what resolution should a scanner have? Well, so I'm answering one of those questions. Admiral Shane, it really depends on what you plan on doing with the photo. I would say scan it as high as you can, because the more resolution you have, the more you'll have the ability to enlarge it and print it larger. So I would say at a minimum 600 DPI scanner on up. So 600 would be my bare minimum. I wouldn't waste time. I don't even think they make them any lower than that nowadays. But 600 on up. Now the other technique that people are doing these days is they're setting up their DSLRs, because your DSLRs have a lot higher resolution nowadays. You got 12, 16, 18, 24 megapixels, 36 megapixels, 50 megapixel DSLRs. So what people are doing is they're setting up kind of like a copy stand where they're getting, either a macro lens or a lens that can shoot that close, and they're shooting the photo flat, and now you've got this big high resolution DSLR image that you can also restore. Do I have any photos you have restored with older Photoshop and redid with newer Photoshop? No, because I just haven't had the time to redo them. So no, I don't have any that fit that criteria, but we are going to be doing one now in new Photoshop, so we'll be able to do some more. So yeah, for example, this one was done with older Photoshop. So 5 years ago, 6 years. Oh, here, you know what? Let me look at the metadata on this photo. This was done, and I don't have that one, so let's look at this. So yeah, this was scanned in 2011, so I was about right. Oh, no, this was scanned in 2003. 2003 Photoshop, that's when I scanned this in at 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve, 2003, and that's when I originally scanned that photo. Now, I worked on it probably, I don't know that I worked on it right away, so I might have worked on it, months later, a year later, whatever it was. But you can think of it as Photoshop probably CS3, CS2, maybe back then. So that's what I was working on when I did this one. Now, this next one that we did on the stream in February, obviously this was Photoshop CC. So Photoshop CC, I was able to do it faster, better, easier, quicker. I was able to do it all in one stream. So it just really, it looks like you use several large monitors to work with, the way you move your head left and right. Correct, I do. And I'm also in a temporary setup. Right now I'm looking at a 4K monitor over here, but next week I should be on my regular setup, so you'll see me more looking down as I'm looking at my Cintiq. I don't have my Cintiq connected, I just moved. All right, so that was current Photoshop versus old Photoshop, or whatever, vintage Photoshop. And this is one that my good friend Victoria, who's in the chat here, she's one of our moderators. This was the graduation photo, and she painted it or colorized it. So bringing in some color back to this photo. So this was just kind of her way of redoing this, and this was with CC. All right. So someone's asking about CC stuff this month, and we don't confirm or deny things that have not been announced. All right, so let's see. So that was just giving you an idea of things that you can think about, or how far you can go, I should say, with a photo. This was another one that I colorized several years ago, and it's very small, so very low resolution. I was shocked at how small this was. So I did this one several years ago. And the thing I always crack up was when someone asked me, well, how did you know what colors their dresses and clothes were? You don't. Unless you were there. You don't know what color things were. So you guess and you play with color and you just put color into the photo. Now, if you look at the background here, I cloned in and filled in the missing piece of the background from the background I had to work with, because on the original photo, the background was missing in this spot. So there was no background here. Now, this is one of those I kind of never got finished with, and I'll give you a dead giveaway that I never finished it. Because my cousin here, who's a much older adult now, is wearing like a light gray suit and light gray sneakers and light gray socks, because I never colored this part in. I just never got to it. And there's something over here, I don't even know what this is, that didn't get colored in. And so this was my first attempt at colorizing a photo from an original black and white, old, ancient, low resolution. This is why you want to scan it high res, by the way, so that you can blow it up. I think I just upsampled this. Now what I want to do is I want to find a shot. The only person in the shot with their eyes closed is my mom, so I want to go find a shot with her eyes open that kind of matches this from that era and replace the eyes. Because everybody else's eyes are open, even if they're not looking at the camera. But this person, my mom, her eyes are closed. And that's my dad in the background there. So I'd love to go in and replace her eyes one day with another shot of her eyes being open. But colorizing a photo, it can be done. That's even more time consuming, because now you're first of all restoring the photo to make it look good again, even as natural colors. And then you're saying, okay, after the photo restoration is done, now, yes, he was tall. Now I want to go in and pick colors and colorize the photo. Yes, by painting it. All right. He's a secret spy. Probably. Okay, so with that said, well, what are we going to work on today? We're not going to work on these today. Or put it this way, we're not going to work on these first. If we run out of time or we run out of content, we'll come back to one of these. Because this is one that I actually want to restore. And I want to go in. And this one wouldn't take that long. I see the nice, this is always great when you have a nice ink pen line going across. Someone actually just drifted an ink pen right across there. This one is not in too bad a shape. It's got a lot of little things that need to be fixed that can easily be fixed with the patch tool and the healing brushes. Getting it back to a good black and white wouldn't be hard to do on this photo. So we might come back to this one pretty quick and do this, because this one wouldn't take that long. Or we might start with this one. I haven't decided yet. But let me go and look at my other ones first. And let's go to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I've got, here, let's go here, open. I've got this one I think I'm going to start with first, because it's kind of like that. Stuff's missing in it. It's got a lot of little scratches, got noise. It's got all kinds of little things going on in it. That's just an old photo that could easily, quickly be restored to something that looks good. It's got a lot of discoloration in it. Then I've got old pictures of me, and I got this one. And this one's kind of fun too, because it's like that same kid, unless he's a twin, same kid, just in two different poses. One with that's what phones used to look like, kids. One with a telephone, and the other one just, doing a little thing there. All right, and that's actually another photo that's from an older format. Okay. So, oh God, where do I start? So many choices, so little time. Let's start with a little girl. All right. I'm not sure why that one. I must have set that one open up in Camera Raw, but we're going to just go ahead and open it for now. And we got this one open. And what I want to do is I want to go in and Let's see here. I'm reading the comments. You guys are funny. All right, so let's go in. And now, by the way, I posted a link earlier in the chat right before we started. And I'm going to stress this point now, and I'm going to leave it alone. Here's a question. Why are the whites? Why are the whites? Why are their eye whites painted blue? If you saw blue in their eye whites, it was probably an accident, but they shouldn't be. And yes, exactly. Okay, so I posted a link in the chat earlier. If you're going to do photo restoration, photo retouching, anything where you're working pixel by pixel, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't work with a tablet. First, full disclosure. I don't get paid by Wacom. I don't get paid by anybody but Adobe. I don't get paid by any of these companies to talk about their products. I don't get any favoritism or anything like that. Half the time they don't know I even exist. But I could not imagine doing any of this work without some type of tablet. I don't care what brand you get, but you gotta have a tablet. And here's why. If you're trying to do portrait or retouching in general with a mouse, trackball or trackpad, you've got button or buttons on it, and those buttons are up or down. They click. And so that means that whatever you're doing, whatever tool you're on, with a mouse, trackpad, or trackball, you're clicking and you're applying full power to whatever that tool is, and you're letting go, and you're not applying anything. With a tablet, you're doing pressure sensitive adjustments. So the harder you press down, the more of that tool you get. The less you press down, the less of that tool you get. You can also control brush size with the amount of pressure you're doing. So while you can absolutely use Photoshop with a mouse, trackpad, or trackball, it's like you're doing it the hard way. You're not taking full advantage, and you're doing it slower. So for example, you'd have to constantly change your brush size. I rarely have to change my brush size because I'm using pressure. And as I hold down my pen, the brush gets bigger. As I don't hold it down as hard, the brush gets smaller. So that saves me several trips back and forth to changing the brush size. It also, controls the flow of whatever it is I'm doing. So if I press a little lighter, maybe it's not as opaque. Maybe it's not as solid. So I got to say it once and last time, and then I'll leave it alone. If you're not using a tablet, you're doing it the wrong way or hard way. And someone, I think I already put my quote in. There it is. The cheapest, Admiral Shane, the cheapest tablet is better than the most expensive mouse. So I don't care again. Tablets are under $100 from Wacom. You can start off with one of their Intuos tablets for under $100. Then if you're ever ready, you can move up to a Pro or move up to a Cintiq or anything like that. But you gotta have a tablet. So I'm going to put this link in one last time. And this will just take you to a link to where you can go look at tablets. And again, I don't care. Don't get it from there. Don't get a Wacom tablet. Don't get whatever if you don't want to. Get a tablet. So Wacom is the ones pros use the most. It's the one I use, one I've been using for years and years and years. And hang on, this is a call I've been waiting for. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. But I had to, there's a guy coming to install my desk or desks in my house, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss his call, and he would say, oh, they're not home, bye. So I had to make sure that happened. Okay, back to our story. We've got the photo open. I talked about the tablet. You got the link. What else here? I just want to make sure. You thought I would bust out an old phone. Not going to happen. All right. Wacom called and said, hey, you said they could use other tablets. That's not good. No. Use whatever you want. Okay, so I got my Wacom tablet in hand. Today I'm using an Intuos Pro Small. So I'm even using their smallest one. Smallest Pro, that is. And normally I'm working on a Cintiq. And the Cintiq is the one that is the display with the tablet built in. So Tuesday I'll be back to my Cintiq because the guy's here to fix the desk, to put the desk together. But Tuesday I'll be back to the Cintiq, and that's the one I use full time. And here I can probably show it. So what it looks like. And the other thing I love about it is this little, I forgot what they call it, this express wheel. The express wheel is what I use to just dial up the brush size or dial down the brush size. You can also configure it any way you want. So you can configure it, for example, to cycle through your blending modes. You could cycle through layers with it. You could cycle through basically anything you want to cycle through with the wheel. The buttons can also be configured to jump to specific tools or functions. So with that said, the tablet just makes life so much easier. All right. I've got the photo open, got my tablet in place. Where do you start? And again, you can start anywhere. And I'm not going to take the time to do the entire photo. But you can start anywhere. But what I usually treat photo restoration the way I treat photo retouching. I start with what's bothering me the most about the photo. So what's bothering me the most about the photo is the little scratches on her leg. That's bothering me the most. And the hair up here. Those things are bothering me the most because the rest is just background. Background's easy to fix. But where the subject is the little girl, that's the most important part of the photo. So those are the most important areas that need to be fixed. All right. Just checking comments here. Is this Julianne Cost? Yes, we were all kids at one point. No, I don't think that's Julianne Cost. It could be, but I don't think so. Because I can't think of where I got the original demo file for this. So this might be Julianne Cost. You never know. We need a second cam pointed at your tablet. I can make that happen probably. Let's see here. Let's see. Wrong one. Sorry. All right, there's a tablet over there. Not zoomed in like I would want, but this is my workspace, so this will be the way I'm working. I might be able to bring that closer. And ask and you shall receive. Normally I'd have that pointed at the Cintiq, so that's why it's a little bit further back. Okay, so we got the photo in place. We got the hand gestures you'll be able to see now. And where do we start? So I'm going to use some keyboard shortcut combinations to jump around and get around quick. I'll talk them through it as we go, or talk my way through it as we go to each one. But for example, if I want to zoom in on her leg right here, instead of hitting the letter Z to get to the zoom tool and then having to zoom in, I can hold down the letter Z. Hold on here for a second. Hold on. Let's make sure we're in the right tool first. There we go. Hold down the letter Z and drag, and that will let me zoom into the area I want to get to, and then I let go of the stylus and let go of the letter Z, and I'm back to the tool I was on. So a lot of times you want to pan around, get around in your image. Rather than switching tools, the tool you want can usually be temporary while you're holding it down and then using your mouse or your stylus to pan around. So for example, if I want to pan the photo now, we know that that's normally the space bar that would let us get the hand tool. But if I hold the space bar down, I can get the hand tool temporarily, move the photo around, let go of the space bar, and I'm back to the healing brush. So again, here's a little dial, the little wheel. So I'm going to just dial the brush size down a little bit because I've got it set to brush size. And which tool you use to do what is totally up to you. There's no law. It's whichever one works best or what's easiest for you to do. So for example, if I want to use the spot healing brush or the clone stamp tool or the regular healing brush or the patch tool, those are probably going to be the 3 or 4 I use the most. And it depends on what I'm doing, whether or not I'll switch back and forth between it. Patch is my favorite for big things, like over here on the left-hand side. I gotta stop jumping over so far. Over here on the left-hand side, the patch tool is probably my favorite for big areas like this. But for smaller areas like this, my go-to tool is the spot healing brush. Now, some people will like or prefer to use the regular healing brush instead of the spot healing brush. I'll show you the difference between the two. You decide which one you like best. So the healing brush has a mode, either normal. I'm sorry, wrong tool. Never mind. I'm thinking patch tool. Okay, forget it. We're on content aware. That's what I want. And so what I just do is I just paint a little bit, and it will use the surrounding pixels to pick up from and restore that area. There we go. And it's always best. Now, here's another thing, and this is the reason why, sorry about your internet problems, Mystical Stingray. But here's another reason why the tablet is the better way to go. Look at how big my brush is. Look how big that circle is. But because I'm not pressing down that hard, I'm only getting a small brush just to do the small areas or small details. If I press down harder, I get a bigger brush, a less accurate brush, I might say. So this allows me to go in, and what did I do? Hold on for a second. Okay, this allows me to go in and just use a smaller brush as needed just by not pressing down as hard. Now, I didn't do one thing that people always say, always question me on, should you do blah, blah, blah. In photo restoration, it's probably best to work on a duplicate layer. That way you can always have something to clone back from or come back to. So I didn't do that yet. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to drag the background down to the new layer icon, and that will give me a copy. So now I'm working on a copy. I'll always have the original, slightly adjusted original to go back to if I need to. So now that we're on that copy, I can just go in and start healing. And yes, you can do bigger areas at a time. And start to fix the leg here. When you get to the edge, that might be tricky. So what I like to do is use this tool right on the edge. So in other words, straddle the background with the area you're trying to adjust, and that will tend to do a better job. Now, if it's still not doing a good job, this might be where you would switch to the regular healing brush. For example, it's picking up the pixels around that area, and the pixels around that area are bad. So therefore, picking up more bad pixels just doesn't really help me. So in this case, what I want to do is just show you the difference. I'll switch to the regular healing brush. And the regular healing brush says you determine where you want to pick up from instead of using the surrounding pixels. And then that way, hang on, I can now turn off my notifications now that I got that phone call. There we go. And now that way you can dictate where it's pulling from. So if I hold down my Option or Alt key with this tool first, oops, hold on, I didn't do it. And then, hang on, I thought I'm holding down my Option key unless my keyboard isn't being recognized here. All right, for some reason, it's not picking up my keyboard. You know what? Let me save this first. we'll just save it to the desktop. We'll come back to that one in just a second. Let me quit Photoshop real quick and relaunch it, just in case. So whenever I see it like locked in that mode where it won't accept my Option key or Alt key, usually a restart of Photoshop will take care of it. All right, now we can bring back up the most recent one. All right, and then we can, we're on a spot healing brush. We can zoom in now, back to where we were, space bar, and now let me try it again. There we go. So now it's working. I can see the little target icon, and now I can click, and now it's saying that's where I'm going to pick up from. So see, it's if you go too high, you'll go too high. So it's like the clone stamp tool in the way that you use it, but that's where it's going to pick up from, good or bad. So if you're picking up bad pixels, you're going to pick up bad pixels. If you're picking up good pixels, you're going to pick up good pixels. So it depends on where you work from, that's what it's going to use. So this is the difference between the spot healing brush and the healing brush. The healing brush, you sample an area first, and that's what it uses. So it's probably best to sample from the surrounding area where you want to pull from, and then that will do a better restore than trying to have it use the surrounding pixels. So I can hold down my space bar to move around again. Same thing here. Now I want to pick a new spot. So we'll pick that spot right there. And now we're healing. And the difference between this and the clone stamp tool is the clone stamp tool will pick up and use the identical pixels. This is still healing. It's just using this area that I'm sampling to heal from. So it's like the spot healing brush, which is automatic, but this is where you're actually getting to choose a source first. All right. Yes, the clone tool is is not, this is again one of those things where someone just said, hey, the clone brush is a pain in the ass. Don't use it. Use the healing brush instead. I disagree. Every tool is for a purpose. So in other words, I don't need to clone here. So you're right. In this case, the clone brush would probably not be the best choice. But that doesn't mean the clone brush isn't absolutely necessary for other types of things where this would not do the same job. So it just really depends on what you need to do. All right, it's looking better. Now keep in mind this image has got a lot of noise in it. That's why we're seeing a lot of red, green, and blue in her legs. So it's got a lot of noise. Now, once I've done the initial kind of clean it up aspect, there's still some blotchiness right here in her leg. And again, zoomed out, I might not notice it, but if I can maybe make it look better, I'd rather do it now and get it over with. So that's where maybe I might use the patch tool. Now the patch tool has both a normal and content aware setting. You might think, well, content aware is great. Why wouldn't I just always use that? Because here's what I found with these two options. This is why I switch back and forth between them. When it's on normal, why are you not working on a separate layer? I am working on a separate layer. When it's on normal, it seems to blend in better. When it's on content aware, it's more precise, meaning it's going to be more of an exact copy of the area you're patching. So sometimes I need that exact copy. Sometimes I want it to blend in better. So that's why I'm constantly using both. Sometimes I'm using normal, sometimes I'm using content aware. It just depends on what I'm doing. So in this case, we're going to use normal, and we're going to go ahead and grab an area right around here. And we'll just go ahead and blend that in. See, now that's blending in much better to the other surrounding skin tone, which is mostly noise. But it's not looking as patched or as blotchy as it was before, I started blending this in. So I use the patch tool to blend it in, to kind of make it look more seamless, where it doesn't look like I used the healing brush or the clone stamp a million different times. And that was a bad patch. Now, if you're near an edge like this, sometimes I'll just go ahead and incorporate the edge. And if I can line it up, sometimes the patch tool will do exactly what I need to do. It's mainly about lining it up. And that wasn't a good one, so we'll undo, put it back. And this, now, where I need the edge to be precise, let me do it again. That's where I would use content aware. Now I'm spending a lot of time on this little area that's not going to make that big of a difference, but just to show you the techniques and tools. So content aware in this case, come up here and patch this. That's going to give me a much better patch than normal would have. It's going to give me a much more precise patch. All right, so now we got these little spots of the photo that are missing. This is a great use of patch where I can go up here where it's not missing, and it will tend to do a good job of blending this stuff in. Now the straw, you want to, if it needs to line up, you're going to keep the patch in the same direction as the original. See how I did that where the line still lined up once I was done? Same thing here. If I was patching this area, there's a distinct line going down. If I want that line to line up, that's why you get a nice preview, so you can keep the line lined up so that when you let go, it still looks lined up. Same thing here, get some of this stuff out of here. This is less critical. Now we got the same situation here. There's a line going through it. So we want to kind of keep that line lined up. Oh, I missed it. Hang on. Still missed it again. Hold on. There we go. That's better. So when I was missing, I just undid it and did it again. All right. Now that I've cleaned this area up a little bit, I can zoom out a little and I can see the bigger task at hand, which is this right here. And not that I would necessarily need to do this next, but we're here. So sometimes when you do a big patch, sometimes it works out great. Sometimes it doesn't. You need to do it in smaller pieces. It just depends on the photo. So if I come over here with this, that might work, it might not. It worked out okay. It's not perfect, but it worked out okay. So think of the patch tool as like you're painting a wall in your house and you're using a roller instead of a brush. The brush is always going to let you do more fine, detailed work, but the roller is going to let you cover a bigger area faster. All right. Now, when you're on the edge like this, oh, I'm not on the edge yet. Hang on. Doesn't matter. Sorry. Thought I was on the edge. I'm not. Oh, my hand isn't cooperating with me today. There we go. All right, zoom in on this hand. That definitely needs some work, some repair. So this is another one of those where you could clone it, you could spot heal it. I'm going to attempt to patch it. Patching may not work. It may work. It may be okay. It may not be okay. A lot of this I won't know what it looks like until I try it. And usually I'll switch methods if I don't like the results. It's right on the edge of a fingernail. this looks like something running through her. Oh, she might be holding a blade of grass, so it's hard to tell there. All right. So, before, after. So as you can see, it's just more of the same now. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So I was just reading comments there. I didn't see anything else that jumped out at me. Let me look down here and see if I missed anything. All right. So sometimes, and this is just human nature, you have a big task ahead of you. You're working on something that you know is going to be hard and time consuming. And by the way, or something you don't really want to do. You ever notice how more apt you are to clean up your house rather than work on something harder? Like you'll just start cleaning rooms because you're still busy, but you're not, doing that task you're dreading or you're afraid of or whatever. Same thing applies in photo restoration. You'll see something you know you need to fix. You know it's going to take time. You may not even be sure what method you're going to use yet, and you find yourself going back and patching things that aren't as important right now because they're easier. So sometimes I'll find myself over here patching the weeds, the field she's standing in, because I want to take a break and I don't really want to work on that thing that's going to be really hard and time consuming. So you'll find yourself doing this a lot. Unless you're the kind of person that just likes to dive right in and fix the things that are hard. That one did not work well at all. Oh. When there's a big area of a lot of little things that are bad, patching sometimes is harder because you're trying to find an area that's good, and you end up doing a lot of patching over and over again because you're trying to make a good area out of one that was totally bad, and you just don't have enough to pull from right away. Okay, so now I got the big stuff out of the way. I might switch back to the regular spot healing brush because the spot healing brush is fast on these little dots here. And I don't have to pick a source every time because it's just using the surrounding pixels. So when there's a lot of little dots, a lot of little specks, a lot of little things, this is probably going to be your fastest method because it is the fastest method. It doesn't require anything other than you hitting the tool with the brush, and away you go. All right, back to work. Had enough play time now. Let's go back to work here. So we're in a spot healing brush. This is fine for now. Little things. Again, using the stylus with pressure, just applying a little bit of pressure so that the brush is not too big. But I have a big brush in case I need one. Is using the patch tool on content aware the same as making a selection, say with the lasso, and using content aware fill? No, because with the patch tool you're controlling where it's filling from. With content aware fill, it's only using the surrounding pixels. It has no choice. So I could patch something on the other side of the photo. With content aware fill, it's just going to use the surrounding pixels. So it is different. Yeah, I didn't think I'd get away with that. And see, that's what happens when I use a brush too big. It just doesn't have, or do, I shouldn't say a brush too big, trying to do too much at one time because it doesn't know what to pick up from. So sometimes you have to fix these areas with a smaller brush first to kind of make them look better. And then you can patch or use something bigger. And that's just probably a better job for patch. All right, rather than watching paint dry, which is kind of where we are now, because at this point it's just more of the same. It's just going through pixel by pixel and fixing things. So I rather oh god, when you get stripes like this, this is one of those things where now it's a pain in the butt. So in this case, since we're talking about technique, this is going to be a little bit more challenging because the tool doesn't know that that's a stripe. It doesn't know it needs to maintain a pattern. So this gets a little bit more difficult, and especially when part of the pattern is like a flower, gets a little bit more difficult because you got to have something to repair it from. So the person that said the clone stamp's pain in the butt, this might be a perfect job for the clone stamp tool because you can tell it exactly where to pick up from and what to pick up. I still like to try the patch first, and if all else fails, I kind of then resort to the clone stamp tool. Not because it's bad, just because it takes more effort. All right, so if I come here and I can say, oh wait, I kind of saw one down here that looks similar. Can I get away with that patch? Maybe. And then down here, okay, I kind of see one going down there, the same line. Can I get away with that patch? Yeah, it works. Same thing up here. Since we're kind of patching the same stripes in the same area, can I just move that down and keep it lined up? For the most part. And this might be, depending on how it blends in. If it blends in too soft, I'll call it, that's when you might want to switch it to content aware. And that was a bad patch. Okay, see what it did there? That little blur, that little poof. Let me undo that. And let me switch to content aware. So same tool, same patch tool, but content aware instead. And now let me do the same thing, and I don't get the little poof. Because that's what I meant by content aware is more precise. The normal mode of the patch tool is just trying to blend more. So if I need it to be precise, I need that sharp edge, that's when I'm going to use content aware. But if I'm out here trying to blend something in, this is where content aware isn't as good. I mean, that worked okay on that one because sometimes you see the line, you see where the patch happened because it's trying to do it precisely. So it just really depends on what it is you're patching, and that's why I'm constantly switching between normal and content aware. All right. Now in this case, the flower is just still destroyed in this one spot. So if I really need to restore that flower, actually let's get this stripe together first. And since I haven't used the, clone stamp tool yet, let me show you the technique. Now, the clone stamp tool is not difficult at all. First and foremost, you want to make sure your brush is no bigger than it needs to be. So I'm trying to clone this bad spot with this better spot. It's not great, but it's better. So I'm going to make my brush as small as I can so that I can kind of do it all at once without having to paint a whole bunch at one time. All right, so with that said, now I need to sample that spot. So I'm going to go ahead and just position my cursor right over it. Now that I got that spot in place, I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key and click. Now that I've done the click, I know that I'm centered on the flower. So where I want to be is centered on this flower before I press down. And if I'm centered properly, my lines will line up. If I'm not, they won't line up. So you might even want to do it on the line first. Let's see if I can get this to work. My line is off a little bit, but not too bad. So I'm now holding down. Oh, and I'm running out of dress at the bottom, so that's another problem. And I'm filling in these lines with the lines below. Okay, so now where I messed up because I ran out of dress down here, so it kind of cloned the same thing. Always remember you also have a history brush. The history brush says, oops, you want to undo on a brush. I don't want to undo the whole thing. I just want to undo part of it. So what I can do, oh, hang on, let me come over here, is put that back in with the history brush. Now it's putting in more bad, so I don't want to go too far with that. But just remember, your history brush is like undo on a brush. All right, so now we're back to patching. This one's kind of a disaster here. All right. And oh, so much better zoomed out because we don't see it. All right, let me get to that one spot down here that I kept wanting to fix and kept avoiding. It's one little bad spot here. So I'm on Content Aware Patch, and Content Aware Patch should do a good job because it'll be more precise. So I'm just trying to patch away the bad first, and then I'll restore the leg. All right, so now that I got that out of the way, now I can come over here and say all of this kind of looks bad. This down here doesn't look as bad. So let's pull some of that in. All right, so that's where Content Aware didn't do such a good job. Let me undo that. Let me try normal. So I'm always choosing between them. Normal, in that case, did a better job. All right, so now we need to clean this up a little bit. And let's blend that in a little bit more. All right, zoomed out, looks perfect. Okay, so obviously I would just keep going up, fixing the areas at the top. So you got to remember, this is where we started. This is where we are now. We would keep going. But let me talk about now some of the things that aren't just doing the same thing over and over again. So the one thing that is really bad in this photo overall is the amount of noise. See all this grain, all this noise? This is just not good in the photo. So how do we take care of some of this noise? How do we get some of this noise out of the photo? So first of all, let me fix a few things on her face here. A few little scratches and stray marks. All right, so noise reduction. The best noise reduction built into Photoshop is actually built into Camera Raw. There is a noise filter that's been here in Photoshop for years and years and years, and maybe we'll compare and you can see the difference. The noise filter from the filter menu is ancient technology compared to the one in Camera Raw. The one in Camera Raw is just a much better algorithm, so it does a better job. But let's take a look at both and I'll let you compare. All right, so on that layer, here, let's duplicate the layer one more time. All right, so now we got this layer that we're going to try and denoise. Let's try the old way first. Filter, noise, reduce noise. This has been here for years and years and years, and it basically is just okay. I never use it anymore because there's just a much better way to do it now. So we're here, and it's like anything else, it's slider. So how much of it do you want to do? And it's just really not making that big of a difference. Here, I'll crank it all the way up. I just can't see where it's doing a lot. If I go to advanced, I can do it per channel. I can also reduce the color noise. Now this will get rid of some of that RGB color, the red, green, and blue color we saw in the noise. It's just when I click OK, that's it. This is before and that's after. It just made a very, very minor difference. So let's throw that layer away. And let's duplicate it again. And let's convert this one for smart filters. And now let's go to the filter menu and come down to camera raw filter. Weak. All right, with the camera raw filter, this is the way we would do it today. You've got in the FX tab, or do we not have it in the FX tab here? I can't remember. I'm always used to doing it in Lightroom, sorry. In the detail tab. In the detail tab, you've got noise reduction. So the noise reduction is much, 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 much better than it is in regular Photoshop. So for example, even just taking it up a little bit. Here, let me zoom in. Now, if I go too far, because you got to remember, all noise reduction in any sense is just blurring the photo. It's blurring out some of the noise. Now, I can see her skin start to get smooth, but I still see those little red, green, and blue dots. So there's a color slider as well. When you drag the color slider over, you're telling it to get rid of those red, green, and blue dots. Get rid of the color noise in this photo. Now, why wouldn't you just take it all the way over? Because then you end up with a blurry mess. Most sliders you can go too far with. So this would be nothing. Look at how far we came, just with a little bit of sliding over just a little bit. That's no noise reduction. That's a little. That's a little more. That's a little more. Now you got to remember, I'm zoomed in too. So you got to ask yourself, well, how much do I need if it's zoomed out? Because I'm not gonna zoom in to do it. No one's going to see it printed zoomed in. So too far, probably still too much. Probably somewhere in this ballpark is where we want to be, because it's going to have a little grain anyway. It's an old photo. And that's nothing. Nothing starts to really look bad. So let's crank it up just a little bit. We already got rid of the color noise no matter what we do. And now let's click OK with that. And because I set it as a smart filter first, that now becomes a readjustable option. So if you choose to, and see zoomed out, her face looks fine now. It does not look too bad on her face. This is before, where I can start to see the noise on her forehead. This is with noise reduction in the camera raw filter. Same sliders in Lightroom as well. So if we zoom in, let's say we go to that. Now let's look at the before and after. Before, after. Just enough to where she doesn't look like a little grainy mess. And you would just continue your photo restoration part. Let's talk about one more thing, and that's the colorization of the photo. Not colorizing, but just the color we've got now and versus what we might want to do. Glad you guys are liking the camera raw tip. Camera raw for the win. And also the fact that the camera raw as a smart filter layer is non-destructive. So if I ever say too much, too little, want to take it off, because I made it a smart filter layer first, I can always double click on it and get right back to that same slider with the same amount applied to it. So too much, drag it down a little bit. Too little, drag it forward a little bit. and I'm right back to where I started, as opposed to having to run it again. Okay, on the family group portrait, how did I vary the skin tones so everyone was a little different? Well, you got to remember too, the skin, even though it was black and white, the skin tones had already been varied with different levels of gray. That helped. So even if I were applying the same, skin tone color, brown in that case, they would still vary because they're not all the same shade of gray. So that helped just by doing that, and of course, just picking different colors. If you have a light-skinned person, pick a lighter shade of that color. If you have a dark-skinned person, pick a darker shade of that color. But just the levels of gray will vary it automatically. Yeah, or you can use use a gray brush on a smart filter mask to reduce the intensity. Because you got to remember that smart filter has a mask, so you can always do it this way. But if you just want to reduce the intensity, come back in and drag the slider down. Because then you're doing it mathematically, you're doing it the right way as opposed to just lowering the opacity, but your choice, you have your choice. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of that, get right back to where we were. And, let's talk about the color. Okay, so I'm not talking about colorizing the photo, I'm talking about this photo has like a sepia tone look to it, whether intentional or not. It could just be aged. Or maybe someone applied it digitally. You can go into your adjustments panel, and in your adjustments panel you have a black and white adjustment. So if I go to black and white, we talked about this on Tuesday when I did a whole thing on black and white. So you've got the black and white adjustment that you can go in and use the targeted adjustment feature of this and just drag to adjust the quality of your black and white. Then from there, you can go in and apply another adjustment to add that sepia tone to it, or add a filter to it, or add a dozen other ways of adding the sepia back in Photoshop or Lightroom. You can also do a split tone. You can do a million ways to get it colored one way or the other back in again. So it's totally up to you. You can add this as a tint, and then you can play around with that right in the black and white slider. So you can alter that color that's in the photo based on either using the tint or just making it a new black and white. So I prefer to use, even if the photo has a sepia tone to it, I prefer to make it a black and white. If I were gonna finish this photo, put it up on my wall, I'd rather put it up on the wall as a black and white rather than a dual tone or a split tone or sepia tone photo. Just my personal preference. It's totally up to you though. So in this case, I would just make my adjustments to get the black and white that I want it, and then that's it. That's an adjustment layer, so I can always turn that layer off, turn it on, come back in, readjust it. But if we had finished all the scratches, that would be my finished photo. And again, this is where we started from. That noisy, grainy, scratchy mess to where we are now. And again, we have more to do, but you can kind of see where this would be headed to the point to where you'd have a decent photo to print out of this little girl. So as I fixed all this other surrounding areas around her, go on her face one more time, or this little hair strip right here, check her arms, or little speckles on her arms, get those out, get that little speckle under the arm. So more of the same. How to use the color replace brush. The color replace brush, here, let me do it on a layer that, let's do it on this layer. All right, the color replace brush. I'm going to duplicate this one layer as a test. So we'll put this above everything else. And now I'm going to go ahead and strip out the color in that layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that there's no more saturation of color in this layer at all. So now I physically changed it. I didn't just use an adjustment layer, I actually changed it to a black and white. The color replacement tool is a tool that's set up to do the same thing as setting your brush to the color blending mode. The only difference is the color replacement tool has a target, the brush does not. So if I were to switch over to my color replacement tool, which is right here, and we were to zoom in, you pick a color that you want to use. So I've got red, and we use that as a sample. Here, let me go back to my stylus. And I can go ahead, where are we? Over here. I got my stylus in place. We're going to dial down the brush size a little bit. And because I've got that red selected, it only affects the midtones. So the highlights stay highlights, the shadows stay shadows. The midtones are what change in color. So you may not get the exact color you're thinking you're going to get because of what you're trying to color. So her hair has a lot of highlights in it that won't get affected with this tool. Has a few shadows in it that won't get affected, but the midtones should. So as I come across here and start painting her hair red, you can see that it maintains what's hair, and I had to pick it up and paint again because I've got it set to sample once, and then it will just continue applying that color until I lift the brush and try it again. So that's what the color replacement brush does that the regular brush does not do on color mode because it's got that little plus sign in it. Come here. This is not the best example in the world to try, but we've got one. So I think at the time I did my family colorization photo, I don't think the color replacement brush was even an option back then. So I had to do everything with the brush on color mode. But that's what it is. It takes the color you have selected. So see, it's a little bit lighter red than my foreground color because the subject's a little bit, got a lot more highlights than midtones. So that's what it is. And we don't need it, so we're going to throw it away. All right. And yep, we got our black and white. Okay, so that's what it does. All right. So that's kind of where we ended up on this one. I'm going to, and again, obviously I'm not finished, but finishing would just be doing more of the same work that we already started at the bottom of the photo. You just keep working up, or start from the top and work down, start from the middle, work out. Totally up to you. I'm going to switch to a different photo so we can see some different kinds of things. Still going to see some of the same things, but just I'm going to show you a couple methods. One of which is, I've shown this before, is what happens when you forget a photo. When I say forget, you don't have the original with you in Lightroom. So let's go to Lightroom. And let's talk about this photo here that I've been dying to do something with. I'm going to do a ton with it today because I don't have the original with me. So my original photos of these are on a file server. I haven't connected the file server back up yet. I haven't put it back on the network. So Lightroom only sees the smart preview of this image. It does not see the smart preview plus original because the original is offline. So if I were to want to work on this photo in Photoshop, I can work on it in Lightroom, but if I wanted to take it over to Photoshop, it's grayed out. Because Photoshop, you can only edit in Photoshop or outside of Lightroom if you have the original, which I don't have at the moment. It's on a drive that's in a box. So it's like normally I'd be stuck in my tracks. Oh well, can't work on this till I connect it up. I can develop the crap out of it. I can go into the develop module and work on the sliders in the develop module all day long. And when I do connect up the drive, they'll apply to the original. But in this case, if I really want to retouch this in Photoshop, I'd be stuck because I can't, because I don't have the original with me. So what I want to do instead, and this is a trick I discovered, and I've shown this once or twice already. What I want to do instead is I want to get the smart preview. I want to work with, even though that's not the full resolution of the photo, I definitely want to get that. So File, even though it's only a smart preview, you can do an export. You always could from a smart preview. But one of the things that you can do is export out a DNG, basically a raw file. I'm saying take this 2048 pixel image on its longest dimensions and give me a raw file of that. Not the full 600 dpi scan, but just of the smart pixels or smart preview pixels that I have with me. So I'm going to set that as a DNG. I told it to put it out to my, actually, put it out on the desktop. Let's put it out on the desktop in a folder called Missing Original, because that's what it is. And it will make a DNG file for me, meaning it'll be as high of a resolution, uncompressed as it can from that smart preview. And then I'm just going to go ahead and export and have it show it to me when it's done. That's it. It takes 2 seconds because it's just a smart preview. It's a smaller resolution file than the original. So now I've got this DNG that if I double click on, opens up in Photoshop because it is a DNG. It is a raw file, just a small one, not as big. So that's the workaround. If you ever catch yourself out and about without your original files, you've at least got the smart preview that you can turn into a raw file if you need to. Okay, so with that said, now, because it is a raw file, it opened it up in Camera Raw first. I can just say, skip this, let's go ahead right into Photoshop, or I can start making adjustments here if I want to. So again, one of the things I like to do is go to my hue, saturation, lightness. I'm going to go ahead and convert that to a grayscale right off the bat. I've got my targeted adjustment tool here. Lighten that area up a little bit. That's too much, right about there. And the next thing I want to do is I want to go in and adjust my contrast. The contrast is too low on this photo for my taste. Let's bump that contrast up quite a bit. And maybe right there. And I can check the blacks in the photo or the shadows. We can kind of tone those down a little bit. Make it a little bit more high contrasty type of a photo. And let's say right about there. I'm just making visual adjustments based on my eye and seeing what I like. Using the same tabs we would have in Camera Raw or the Develop module. Okay, so sorcery. Now that I've got it kind of looking the way I want, at least right off the bat, just doing Camera Raw adjustments, I can now go in and say, yep, I want to do more that would be harder to do in Camera Raw, so let's go ahead and open the image. So we'll open it up and give me a copy of it based on what I just did. So now that I've got that in place, I tend to work a lot in CMYK. Is there a way to get this to work for that mode? To get what to work for that mode? I guess is what I'm asking. What are you trying to get to work in that mode? Because right now, the image, even though I made this into a black and white, the image itself is, actually it is a grayscale now. If I had not converted to grayscale, it would come up as an RGB, but if you wanted to convert it either to RGB or CMYK right now, you could. And that's a good, important point. Because I told it to make this a grayscale and bring it into Photoshop, it's in grayscale mode, which means it cannot be in color. So if you wanted to colorize this photo, add a sepia tone, add a tint, add a whatever, you would need to convert it to RGB, even though it's not going to put any color in it, but it's going to put it in a mode that can accept color. For the person asking the question about Camera Raw, you tend to work in CMYK a lot. Is there a way to work in that mode in Camera Raw? I've never tried this, but if I'm in CMYK, which I don't want to be, but if I am, I cannot. So I've never tried that. So no, you cannot have Camera Raw and CMYK at the same time. Because you got to remember, Camera Raw originated from digital cameras, DSLRs. So it's a RGB workflow. So you'd have to work in RGB until you're done, then convert it to CMYK, which is going to throw the colors off a little bit, I know. It's going to desaturate it. But that's your only option at this point. So now that I'm in RGB, I can go to the filter menu and I can go into Camera Raw mode. So just work in RGB until you're done, then convert it to CMYK and make any adjustments to the colors after the fact. All right, so we'll duplicate the layer, Command J or Control J on Windows. We'll call it our restoration layer. And now that we're on a restoration layer, again, where do you start? With whatever's bothering you the most, the ink pen mark that's going up and around. I don't know how that happened. I don't know who did it, but it's got to go. All right, so this is probably one of those great times to use the spot healing brush, because the spot healing brush it lives for stuff like this. So same thing here. This is where, again, a stylus comes in nice and handy. And you don't have to do it all at once. You can do a little bit at a time. And we're just coming down the chin here and getting rid of these lines. Oh, here's a line here. Some kind of weirdness in the photo. Now here we've just got some, like a stain, because I saw that hard line, and then I went zoomed or panned over and saw, oh, this is just one big stain. So we'll deal with that separately. So we got all these little marks. Magic. I know, it's like magic. Spot healing brush is my go-to tool to start with at all times. Because if I don't need to sample a specific area, it is absolutely the fastest way to fix a lot of this little stuff. And then the patch tool is probably my second go-to tool for bigger areas where the spot healing brush is not as good. Now, can you do the whole thing all as one? Yes, you can. If you want to go all the way around, it will do as much or as little as you tell it to do. And then when you let go, you'll see where you missed it. Okay, let's keep going. Now again, can I do this big area with the spot healing brush? I can, but I don't know, that screams out patch tool to me. You can trace that line with the pen and stroke with the, that is a nice trick. Yes, stroke it, or what he just said is you can trace that line with the pen tool and then stroke it with the healing brush. You can, but most people are like pen tool afraid or pen tool scared. So it's much easier for them to not use the pen tool unless they have to. Okay, so I did a lot of the little stuff with the spot healing brush. There's more little stuff to do. But I'm seeing some bigger areas that just would take more time to get it right. So this is now where we bring out the patch tool. So like right off the bat, I'm going to set my patch tool to normal. And we'll come over here and we'll just kind of outline that. Now, here's another, from a technique standpoint, you might be tempted to just do this. To just go ahead and draw one big thing around it. I tend to advise against that, because you're now telling it to patch this whole area with wherever you drag it to. That, in this case, it probably would work. But you're better off, in most cases, trying to patch only what you need to patch, as opposed to trying to draw or trying to just cheat with one big oval or ellipse or shape. And that will tend to give you a better patch than just trying to do one big piece at a time. So try and do it in the shape of the thing you're trying to get rid of. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about, where part of this stain is in the dark area of her hair, part of it's in the skin tone. There's a line for the hair, so if I don't do it right, I'll end up with the line being off. And so I'm just going to drag it straight along the line, keeping the line in place and letting go, and that should work out nicely. And it did. Same thing here, there's a highlight in her hair. So I'm going to patch that. I'm going to drag it right along the highlight. So the patch tool is also about direction, where you drag it in, what you keep it aligned with. And same thing here, we got some little spots in the eye. I could fix those with the spot healing brush, but I got the patch tool in my hand. So we'll try and patch those out first. If not, we'll come back with the spot healing brush instead. Okay? Now we got this bigger stain. This is another problem with old photos. They got things spilled on them, moisture, all kinds of spots. Pen tool is a game of its own, or its own game, yes. So how you attack this is really going to depend on the stain and the area you need to patch at any given time. You might want to do it in pieces. You might want to do it all at once. It just will depend. I think the best approach in this case is going to be in pieces. So let's go ahead and take part of this, just this one little part at the top here. And we'll go ahead and pull that down, keeping it as best we can aligned with the ear. It's got a little wonky right here. All right, and then that leaves us with just the part on the face that makes that a lot easier. And again, see, the problem is, if I grab that whole big stain, where am I going to drag it to? Because I don't have a whole big area on this side of her face that's not stained. So in this case, again, you might want to work smaller and repair it. And that was a bad one. So let's go up that way with it. Or I might try and blend in the line first and then have more to work with. More clean area to work with, that is. It's just bad right in here, so I might blend in that line. And this is just not cooperating with me the way I want. So let me try it on content aware. First, let's get this. There we go. Now the content aware algorithms are always being updated. So if you've used content aware in the past and it didn't quite do what you wanted, you might want to try it again. Because there are things I've noticed that it does better now than it used to on content aware. All right. Okay. Stain on a color photo. Depends on the photo, depends on the stain. If there's nothing to sample, can I just select the area and mess with the levels? I absolutely do that, but what I would say is select the area, duplicate that area onto its own layer. So select the area, Command J. So for example, let's say I grab the lasso tool. Let's say I wanted to just mess with this area. I would select it like that and then Command J or Control J so that that is on its own layer and then make my adjustments to it. So absolutely you can do that. And sometimes the person that said that, you're absolutely right. You just won't have a good area to sample from. So it will take some repair work to create an area to be able to patch to. You might have just nothing to drag it to. Everything is destroyed in the photo. So you got to spend some time making a clean area that you'll use for future patching. All right, so we took some time off. This is where we were. This is where we are now in just a short amount of time. So now we got some issues to deal with water spots or things on the background. So same thing here, and doing this with a mouse, yucky. I know that would be yucky. So yeah, if I didn't have these clean areas to patch to, or patch from, I guess it would be what it would be called, then my work would be a lot harder because I would have to clean up an area first in order to be able to drag the patch tool to it. Another thing is clean your display. I just caught myself trying to patch something that's actually just a bad spot on the display itself. And it wasn't going away. It just wasn't going away no matter how much I patched it. Now these areas aren't necessarily clean. They're just cleaner than the area I was patching from. Oh yeah, I've spent like 5 seconds at one time trying to get something that just wouldn't go away in the photo until I realized 5 seconds later, oh, it's on the display. Why won't that go away? What's wrong with the tool? All right, what are we doing on time? So in 15 minutes, Beetlejuice is up next. So let's see if we can get through most of this. I think we can within 15 minutes. This one can be done, or certainly in a better state than it was. All right, so now that I got that area cleaned up, I can kind of patch some of these bigger areas down to a cleaner area. There's lots of little, I guess, water spots or spots in this photo, but they're in the background. They're in an area that really won't be noticeable once it's printed, and actually they just add to the fact that it's an old photo. So some of the stuff is taken for granted and it's forgiven. But this isn't. So this is one of those areas where we need to do something to it. Oh, hang on. Can't run it. Way. So I'm just getting rid of these lines first, and then I can come in and get rid of some of this other stuff. So again, creating the clean area. Am I using Photoshop CC? I'm always using the most current version. So yes, I'm using Photoshop CC, latest version with all the updates. What tool is that? This is the, sorry, I was looking away when you asked me that. This is the patch tool. The patch tool is right there. It looks like a, it's, by the way, I have my, this is another tip. Notice my patch tool, my spot healing brush are separated. That's because in Photoshop CC, you've got the ability to customize your toolbar. So I customize my toolbar so that those items would be separate and not underneath each other. So I can just quickly grab them as I need them. So this group is still a group, but the patch tool I've separated out. So that is a new feature in Photoshop CC that you can create your own custom toolbars and assign them to workspaces that you're in. So when I'm in my retouching workspace, all that stuff that I use the most is separated out. All the tools that I don't use the most are buried, which makes my life a whole lot easier. because I don't have to worry about digging for a tool. Because I'm always using the healing brush and the spot healing brush. I hated the fact that they were buried underneath each other. So now I've separated them out. So I've got them separate here. I've got the color replacement tool separated out from the brush tool. I've got the sharpen tool, and I've got dodge and burn separated out. So basically I just customized it to my liking of the tools I use the most. Tools I don't use are buried under this little menu icon down here, so that if I ever do need them, I can still get to them, but they're not taking up valuable real estate on my tool panel by being just in the way. So the customized tool panel feature is one of my favorite new features in Photoshop CC. All right, where are we at here? Oh, yeah, I couldn't imagine not using the customized tool feature. When that came out, oh my God, I was like one of the happiest kids ever. Because prior to that, in earlier versions of Photoshop, I would use the configurator to make my own panel and put my tools on it the way I want it. But now I don't have to do that. Now it's built in. And customized workspaces as well. But I would say for me, it's more about the tools than it is the actual where the panels are. Panels are great too. That's why workspaces exist. But for, see what happens when you try and talk and do stuff at the same time. But for most of the stuff I do, it's the tools are more important to me than where the panels are located. Because the tools are what I'm in all the time, or using all the time. And sure, you can use keyboard shortcuts, but even when you're using keyboard shortcuts with a tool buried under another tool, you're having to hit that keyboard shortcut 2 or 3 times to cycle through to the tool you want. Alrighty. All right, coming along nicely. So at this point, so we got 10 minutes left. What would I do next? So the restoration, for the most part, I see a spot down here. The restoration for this photo mostly is done. So once you finish the restoration, then you have to ask yourself, because now you're back to the original, or close to original state of the photo. So you have to ask yourself, well, do you like the photo? Now that you've fixed the issues with it, you've fixed the problems with it. So now you can go back to traditional retouching if you want to. And I just saw something I want to retouch. That's why I'm bringing this up. Now, of course, again, it gets back to which philosophy you're following. If this is for you, then you feel free to retouch. If it's for someone else or a client or for historical restoration value, then you might not be at the liberty to retouch. You might just only be able to restore it back to the way it originally looked. But since this is my photo, I can do whatever I want with it. And I can like fix this little bit of hair that's sticking off the side that's driving me crazy. So I can get to this, and now I can do what I want. So this is where I would use the clone stamp tool, because the clone stamp tool is just easier for this kind of stuff. Hold down your Option or Alt key, click the spot you want to sample from, let go, and then you are now using the clone stamp tool to clone that little bit of hair away. You can always resample and get a new spot if you need to. And this is the kind of stuff, again, that I couldn't imagine not using a tablet of some kind for. All right, that was better. Okay, one more thing up here, kind of bugging me. Same thing, so while we're on the clone stamp tool, we're going to hold down our Option or Alt key, and then we're just going to get rid of this. There's just a slight dark area above her hair on the background that was kind of distracting to me. That's a little better. All right. Oh, wait, one more thing. Right there. So once you zoom out, then you can start to see, little spots you might have missed. Because you got rid of the most distracting things, now you can see the other things that you didn't see right away. All right, Dream Float Joe, thanks for joining me. We're just about done. We'll catch you on the next one. We'll see you on Tuesday. And now that little side where kind of wasn't happy with this. So again, we'll use the clone stamp tool. There's a little too much lightness sticking out. That should be like kind of a straight line going around. That might have got messed up in the patching. Oh, undo. Just kind of curve that off and clean that up a little bit. And we don't really need that highlight. There we go. Her ear now just looks weird to me. This needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Ah, that's better. Better. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad this helped you out a lot. You can always catch the replay, which will be available in about 5 minutes. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm just reading comments here. Yep, the video on demand will always let you watch the past broadcast. Okay, so now at this point you can play. We kind of did the retouching. We kind of did what we want. So now it's more about what else do you want to do to this. So for example, one of the things I might want to try is going to my filter menu, converting this for smart filters, going up to that camera raw filter that we now have the ability to go into because we switched it to RGB. And in the camera raw filter, I might want to try post-crop vignette in the effects panel. So I can either do a darker vignette around it or even a lighter vignette around it. And that lighter vignette would be more vintage. That would be kind of what would have been done at the time. But your choice. So, and again, this is non-destructive, so I can play around with this vignette. I can say that, now even though there's no haze in this photo, because it's not, outside, I still like to play around with dehaze, just for my contrast, just for things like that, to kind of like bring down a little bit of the haze in this photo, even though it really doesn't have haze. Is it hard to colorize them? It's not hard, it's just time consuming. So if I click OK on that, that will give me that effect. And again, I can turn that off or on at any given time. And if we look at where we started, this is where we were when we first came in. This is where we are now. So this, again, wasn't a necessarily difficult one. They're all just more about time. So the more damage there is, It's not that you need a million different techniques and ways to fix it. It's just going to take time to fix a million things that are wrong with it. This one, like I said, of all of them, had the least amount of problems. But if I needed to do more, it would just take more time. It wouldn't be necessarily anything new or different than what I've done before. Now, there are times where something's damaged and you need to replace it with the other one. Like, for example, if one of the eyes was completely gone, like just torn out of the photo, then at that point, I might select the other eye. I probably would select the other eye, duplicate it onto its own layer, free transform it, flip it over, and try and get it in place and size it and get it just right. So, and then blend in where you cut it out, because there is going to be a difference in shading from left to right. So things like that you may have to do on a photo that's missing pieces of the photo. But other than that, everything else is pretty much, the way it is. So this photo, I can now save it, print it, put it on social media, whatever I need to do, because this one is pretty much ready to go. So we'll save it. It'll ask me where. I'm going to put it in the same folder, missing original, and we'll call it Mom Restored. That way we don't replace the original. Still got the layers, still got all the smart filter layers, got everything left that if I need to, I got the original. If I need to go back and do something, I can always go back and take care of it. All right, so with that said, we're catching up only on, well, good. I'm glad you guys definitely got things out of it. Remember, this was a user-suggested topic. So we'll do more user-suggested topics. So if you got something that you want to see me do, I know a lot of people are still requesting Muse. So I'll probably kick something off with Muse on Tuesday. But if you got something you definitely want to see, you can always put it in the comments. When I say if you want something to see, you can put it in the comments, and I will try and work it into the schedule. If not, I can't promise that we'll get to everything, but we'll try our best. And if it's not, doesn't take up a full 2 hours, those are probably even better, because I can work those into an existing topic. So if you ask a question or say, hey, I'd love to see this particular thing, I can work it into another topic as we see. Show sneak peeks. Okay. I'm only allowed to show sneak peeks that I'm allowed to show sneak peeks for. So, no. Do you think sepia tones gives older photos more character? Personally, I don't care for sepia tones as much. I don't have anything wrong. I don't have anything against people using them. It's just not my personal preference. But yes, I think they do add character to them, done right and not overdone. So with that said, my time is up. Thanks for watching me here on the Adobe channel. Next up is Beetlejace, my good friend Jason Levine. And Jason, go ahead and take it away.